5. The break with his background. Every great man willingly or through expulsion leaves the shell that housed him while he was still weak and vulnerable, still shaping himself. A second birth, as it were, is necessary to give him independence, impetus, self-reliance, with some genius. This rebirth is seen in some insignificant change of location, from Goethe, for instance, removed to Weimar from Frankfurt, or traveled to Italy from Weimar, or when Bonaparte was sent from Corsica to the mainland. In some others, this renaissance is accompanied by eruptions for the quiet Spinoza. Eruptions with the sound of ram's horns, the mystic burning of black altar candles, and that intonation of responding formulas, Old Testament in spirit and style. If there had been nothing but Orthodox Jewish congregations in the world, this curse would really have meant something, at the very least, a wandering life. Free as a bird and starving, but since the Christian city of Amsterdam, with its ancient gables and canals, was spread around the Portuguese congregation at Amsterdam, and villages lay at a short distance where even the Amsterdam city government was powerless. The anatheme in the beautiful Portuguese synagogue had for Spinoza the importance only of an outward, dramatic representation of what had long been consummated within him. In July 1636, 2 years after his father's death, and 1 day after Rembrandt's declaration of bankruptcy, this expulsion came upon him. It was preceded by protracted attempts first to discover his theories about the existence of God and the obligations of Orthodox Judaism, followed by conferences with the rabbis who loved or had loved him, and who did not realize that with the offer of an annual salary of 1,000 guilders, they were trying to bribe him to play at being a Jew, just as formerly in Spain Jews had played at being Christians. The break occurred only after the exhaustion of those efforts and the decline of his father's house, because Spinoza had within him extraordinary and deeply rooted ties to the Jewish extraction and education. He would hardly have voluntarily turned his back on Judaism. That imperiled community. Had the community granted him independence in thought and conduct of life, for he never ceased to occupy himself with the Hebrew language and its grammatical necessities, as his literary remains bear witness, philosophical connoisseurs are safe in maintaining that part of his thinking can be wholly understood only by translating his Latin terminology back into the Hebrew from which it sprang. Judaism, however, always meant the observance of numerous prayers and laws governing the day, the week, and the year, which an independent and absolute spirit could observe no longer, after they had lost meaning for him, just as it would be impossible for him to exchange his calendar for that of the ancient Semitic lunar year, and to date his letters from the year 5420 after the creation of the world. Because he knew this world had been standing or running a few million years longer than that. Nevertheless, the world of Judaism, as Spinoza came to know it, was full of meaning. As a mighty tree full of sap, it towered into the present, except for the Jesuit schools of the Thomistic philosophy and canonistic conception. the only surviving tree of that luxuriant grove of ancient philosophy which once flourished in Memphis and Thebes and Syracuse and Athens, Antioch and Alexandria, Jerusalem with and Pumbedita. The thinking and learning which were taught there were ancient, and the universe was Jewish. And the methods of dialectical argument were products of that great epoch in which the human intellect learned to reason logically, to recognize cause and effect, instead of analogy and unity of sound as the basis for research. The subject matter moved on the same level, since outworn, the holy books of the Old Testament, supplemented and interpreted by the oral teachings and their communication, the rabbinical literature. In his book, it was already recognized how much the basis of Judaism was in need of enrichment through contemporary philosophy. Platonic and Aristotelian tribunaries were admitted and incorporated in the Talmudic canal system, and finally, Hispano-Jewish thinking left no lack of fresh sources and neat sluices. Nevertheless, with his knowledge and education, Spinoza was determined to observe the things directly. No illusions, no illuminate with reason the text, even the holiest, and to force his own path through the thicket of opinions by submersion into the real nature of God and the world. His own excommunication coincided with the expulsion of Juan de Prado, who was accused of offending God by making him equivalent to nature. This was thought, like Spinoza's, only less guarded, voiced, and it would be only natural if the younger Spinoza had learned from the older man. He would still remain the person he was, all the more Jewish in its radicalism was his silent but inexorable renunciation of his descent. After the attempted dagger thrust by an avenger of Israel and the ban pronounced in his absence, his circle consisted exclusively of Christian scholars and Dutch sectarians, so-called Regensboers or collegians, who were regarded with skepticism, or who were regarded with suspicion and antipathy by the official Calvinist Church, even though it was not in a position to persecute them.